you can always count on white Democrats to start complaining and, oh my God, this is what happened and why we lost, and it's defund the police, it's wokeism, it's identity politics, it's all of that stuff, even though none of that stuff Vice President Kamala Harris actually talked about. It's just whining and complaining. Here's James Carville just really upset, talking about, man, we told y'all this identity crap, it's awful. Listen to this.
We have no legislative power, we have no executive power, we have no judicial power. So when you're out of power, you're an opposition party. And go and tell all of the people that are sending you and asking you for money, justify what you did wrong, and tell us what you're going to do different. Because what you've done ain't worth a shit. Get your head around that. And all of the Washington-based Democrats farting around, going to wine and cheese parties and talking about how misogynistic race, get your ass out of Washington and go work on a 2026 campaign and do penance to make up for your goddamn arrogance and stupidity. Well, we're going to say, we told you so. We told you this identity shit was disaster. We told you to get out in front of public safety issues. You didn't. We told you to have an open process and demonstrate the magnificent and staggering and deep talent that exists in the modern Democratic Party. You didn't. We told you to differentiate yourself from Biden. You didn't. I hate to be some fucking know-it-all, but all of these things are part of the record.
Yeah. All right. So not only that, I saw this tweet earlier, and I had to comment on it, and my next guest also commented on it. Let me find it. So Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. So he posted this. Of the 20 highest median income states, Democrats won 18 of them. Of the 20 lowest median income states, Democrats won 3. Yes, race and gender play a big role in politics, but the hard truth is this: Democrats clearly aren't listening to the people we say we fight for. Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. So, Cliff, also on Morning Joe yesterday, they read Maureen Dowd's column, and they were talking about. They read her entire column, and her whole column was about identity politics, and Trump got a mandate. Here's what's interesting. The votes are still being tallied. President Joe Biden won by 4.4%. Trump is going to win by about 2%. Do you recall folks calling it a mandate in 2020? No, they didn't. So it wasn't a mandate. Just because he won all 7 battleground states, that's not a mandate. The numbers are the numbers. But the thing that trips me out is all of a sudden they're blaming identity politics. And here's the thing, Cliff, they never seem to admit that whiteness is identity politics. Maleness, white maleness is identity politics. It seems that, if it's black or women or Latino or gay, that's the only identity politics that exists.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Roland. And as I said in my tweet, this country was founded on identity politics. There's never been an era that hasn't been defined by identity politics, by white identity politics, by white male identity. It was literally, identity politics is literally enshrined in the Constitution. Y'all said only white men, property owners, could vote. That's the original identity politics. And every era, every decade since then has been defined by that identity politics.
In fact, Cliff, here is Donald Trump touting identity politics today.
Yes.
And getting their money's worth. Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America.
So Donald Trump is saying, white people, I'm coming to you with reparations.
Exactly. And that was written into everything that he just said is a part of Project 2025.
Yep.
You know, the Project 2025 that he said he didn't know anything about. But before before the votes are even counted in this election, he's already rolling out the Project 2025 policies, and his transferring or transforming the Department of Justice and the Office of Civil Rights from something that investigates and deals with anti-Black racism. He is now redefining it as dealing with anti-white racism, anti-white discrimination, which doesn't exist, but that's the identity politics. And that's from Jim Crow through the Southern strategy, right, which was identity politics defined, to Ronald Reagan, to Pat Buchanan, all the way through this person. That's all they do is identity politics. In fact, even the economic anxiety argument is really another form of identity politics, because when they talk about the working class and economic anxiety, they're only talking about the white working class, as if Black folks ain't working class. That's identity politics. It's all this country knows.
And so now they say, oh, we need to get away from these things. We don't need to be talking about these things. And so let's not, we should be talking to the individual. Let's go to that Chris Murphy tweet, because he talks about, how we're losing the folks at the bottom. Okay, there's a slight problem here, Cliff. If I looked up right now and I said, let's see, the 20 lowest medium income states. Let me just, because I tweeted this to Chris and I said, okay, you know what? Can you tell me exactly what those states are?
Right.
And if we looked at medium income by state, what we would realize, so let's see, the poorest states by medium income. Okay, so here we go. All right, y'all. Here are the poorest states by median income. Number one is Mississippi. Red state. Number two, West Virginia. Red state. Number three, Arkansas. Red state. So that's just three. I'm gonna pull up the other ones. Here's why I want to do that. So if we go by Chris Murphy's perspective, then Republican policies, if they were so amazing, if they were so great, if they spoke to the working class, then those wouldn't be the bottom three brokest states in the union. It would be nirvana. It would be amazing. It would be lovely economically. Folks would be flocking to Mississippi, West Virginia, and Arkansas to live and do business because it's so great. Those people, clearly, Cliff, are voting against their economic interest.
Right. And what's so interesting is, you've got all these red states, and as you listed them all out, or some of them out, and if these people are so economically anxious, you would think that they would vote out the people that have been running their states for decades, not for 1 or 2 years, but for decades. In fact, last year in Mississippi's election, You had a Democratic candidate that was just talking about economics, talking about getting rid of the tax on food, which Mississippi's is the highest, right? Talking about expanding Medicaid in their state, talking about those bread and butter issues that they're trying to convince us that these folks are so economically anxious about. And he couldn't win. Because at the end of the day, in those states that Chris Murphy's talking about, the white folks there are okay with being poor, as long as the black folks are more poor, right? As long as they've got some other folk that they can look onto as being above them or pointing out and saying that they're the problem, they're okay with that. So this ain't about economic anxiety, or those states would look differently.
In fact, Cliff, here's the bottom 10 states: Mississippi, Arkansas, West Virginia, Louisiana, Alabama, Oklahoma, South Carolina, New Mexico, South Dakota, Kentucky. Of those 10, only one is a blue state, which Vice President Kamala Harris won, which Democrats typically win. That is New Mexico. So I'm trying to understand, what exactly is Senator Chris Murphy, is James Carville, is Maureen Dowd, is Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, all of these people who keep talking about Senator Bernie Sanders. I really want them to explain to me how they are going to talk to the people in 9 of these 10 states to say, hey, you should be listening to Democrats. There's nothing to say, because what Howard Dean said in 2004 still applies. The Republicans talk to these people about culture, about God, gays, and guns. Republicans ran $135 million worth of ads about Vice President Kamala Harris and transgender surgeries for illegal immigrants in prison. Even though the policy came together under Donald Trump, he was in the White Office. He was in the Oval Office. I call it the White Office because historically has been the White Office. But this is the reality. So I'm just trying to understand, what is the conversation that Democrats can have with all of these red states that continue to be broke, to be poor, to be illiterate, and have the worst health outcomes?
Yeah. At the end of the day, we can't count on this media or even these Democratic elected officials, because I've said from the beginning that there's some Democrats that would be more comfortable losing elections than to actually have to win elections and to acknowledge a progressive black base, right? But we can't count on the media, especially, to get this analysis right of this election any more than when there's a police shooting that you can count on the police department to do the investigation. The media is complicit in this. The media is complicit in the ways that they tore up Biden, only talked about his age, never talked about Trump's age, only talked bad about the economy, and then you wonder why people think that the economy was bad, when in fact it's the envy of the entire industrialized world. But all they did, and then now we're supposed to trust them to do this analysis, talk about economic anxiety. They can't do it because to talk about a real analysis that really talks about the issues of race and misogyny forces them to deal with themselves. And just like the police department is not going to investigate themselves that way, this media is not going to investigate themselves that way. So we can't count on them. So we got all these bad think pieces that are out there. Just like I can't count on them even for these exit polls. Because I can't believe that the same people that tried to tell us for 2 years that black folks weren't going to show up, that black men weren't going to show up, and then we show up and we do at the same level as what we did with Biden, right? Even more arguably. And yet we're supposed to trust them to say, oh, you know what? We were wrong about y'all. No, they're not going to do that. And so all of the stories that we're seeing are basically just to reaffirm the narratives that they had just spent 2 years trying to build up.
Yeah, it amazes me, and I pulled up another one, and so I think these are the 20. So Mississippi red, West Virginia red, Louisiana red, Arkansas red, that's 4, Alabama red, that's 5, New Mexico Kentucky, red. Oklahoma, red. South Carolina, red. Tennessee, red. Missouri, red. North Carolina, red. Ohio, red. Indiana, red. Florida, red. I'm absolutely confused. What is the conversation? And here's the other thing. Here's what I want to know. Okay, James Carville, you said, this defund shit. Biden and Harris gave more money to the cops. They actually did more. I'm sorry. Do you recall hearing Biden or Harris talk about defund the police? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that in any Senate race. So let's see here. They're latching on. Then, these Democrats need to get out of these parties in D.C. How about you, James? How about you get out of your crypt? How about you get out of your crypt and realize what's actually happening out here? How about you realize that no matter how much truthful information was shared, people decided, you know what? I like the lie. I saw the Scott Pelley 60 Minutes interview. I saw a clip, and this woman, Scott Pelley told her how the election was. He was talking to her about the election, and I don't feel better. My wages didn't go up. Not. He's telling her. In fact, here it is. Listen to this.
7:30 we open, 7:30 to 10. Yeah.
Roz Werkheiser was a waitress 25 years ago. Now she runs the place.
My mother used to always say, gotta vote Democrat, they're for the poor people.
You grew up in a Democratic household?
Yes.
But you just voted for Donald Trump?
Yes.
Inflation is down by more than half. Interest rates are falling, mortgage rates are falling, wages are going up. Are you not feeling that?
I don't feel it. No, I don't feel it. I don't feel it at all. Everybody I talked to, nobody's wages went up. But we had 4 years of this. 4 years. Gas was super high. Yes, it just went down now, but the past 3.5 years it was up.
Okay, all right, okay. So she said gas was up. Okay, but see, again, this is the folks who, the last 4 years it was up. There was a thing called COVID in 2020. There was a thing called COVID in 2021. And we were still impacted by COVID in 2022. So you weren't gonna be paying $1.50 for gas because people weren't going anywhere. So again, like you sit here and you go, what the hell are y'all talking about? You were coming out of COVID.
There's a survey that was done recently that shows that people who identified correctly objective statements about the nature of the economy, the nature of the country, basic issues like immigration, like people who were able to identify that immigration has actually gone down over the past year and a half. People who were able to identify that inflation is actually pretty low.
Yeah, I got the graphic right here. Keep going.
Yeah, people that were able to identify these basic facts overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris. People who did not know these basic facts, they voted for Trump, right? So there is a basic problem with just the nature of like facts and information, and that's a real problem, right? And I'll even say that some of Democratic, progressive, whatever, that they've got to do better about the way that we deal with communications, right? It's not just the messaging, and it certainly isn't the policy, but it is about this ecosystem where conservatives control just a lot of different forms of communication that Democrats and progressives don't have. And then the mainstream media makes it worse, right? Because what they do is they repeat the stuff that Trump is saying. And so there's a very basic problem that if people have accurate information, then they will vote the right way. It's not even like the woman in the video said, where she's like, oh, I'm not feeling it, right? It's one thing if you say, well, yeah, I know that this is a fact, that the economy's better. I'm just not feeling it. Fine, that's your reality. I'm not asking you to whatever your lived experience, but you got to recognize what the reality is overall. And most people who voted for Trump simply are receiving different information, and they live in a different reality.
But we also have to accept, Cliff, we also have to accept the fact that Donald Trump and Republicans lie.
Yeah.
And they lie with impunity.
Yeah.
And Fox News and conservative talk radio and conservative digital, they protect the lie. They advance the lie. They literally push the lie. Here is somebody here talking about, and again, for all these people out here, oh my God, gas prices were high. Right. They won't accept this fact. That they won't accept the reality of what happened. But there is a reason. There is a very clear reason. First, why gas prices were low, why they then went high, and why we had inflation. Listen.
Here's the accurate story that I've been telling for forever. Saudi Arabia and Russia hatched a plan to con Donald Trump into signing a huge production cut deal. And they actually did this before COVID. They were going to do this regardless of if COVID happened or not. Understand that Vladimir Putin and MBS are tight. They're very close friends. They're very close allies. Why in the world would they get in the middle of an oil price war? If not but for to get Donald Trump to the table. So COVID happened. They started the oil price war. Oil went negative. That's the zero line. So that's how far below zero it was. And they got what they wanted. They got Donald Trump to come to the table. You see, they needed his blessing because he had been threatening Saudi Arabia his entire presidency if they didn't continue increasing oil production. But they knew if they showed him a little favor, they knew if they talked to him the right way, they could pretty much convince him to do anything because it's Donald Trump. So he agreed to the OPEC 2020 deal, a 2-year production cut of 10%. So this was a 9.7 million barrel a day production cut, which at the time was almost as much as the entire U.S. production because U.S. production had fallen to 11.5 or so million barrels a day. So just imagine almost wiping out all of the United States oil production on the global market, what that would do. That deal was signed in April of 2020, and it ended May 1st of 2022. The problem with the deal was that it was a 2-year cut. That was a terrible, terrible deal. This is what happened to gas prices from the beginning of the deal to the end of the deal. This is what happened to inflation in the United States, beginning of the deal, end of the deal. This is what happened to global inflation, beginning of the deal, end of the deal. And this is what happened by the end of the deal. Saudi Aramco became the most valuable company to ever exist. And somewhere in there was a deal for Jared Kushner to get $2 billion. That is the accurate and correct depiction of the events. Because half the podcasts in the country right now are getting it wrong. So don't just share this, share it with the right people. Those people running those podcasts, people in the media. That way they can deliver the correct information. Thanks.
Here's Cliff. I mean, it happened.
Yep. And that's the point that I was trying to get to with that graph, and you are absolutely right by saying that people will believe the lie. So the reason that you've got this false information and people being disconnected from reality is because at the end of the day, they don't want to hear what that white brother just said when they can listen to the white racist that'll just tell them that the reason that they're in their situation is because of these black folks, it's because of these immigrants, it's because of whatever, it's because of LGBT, all of that stuff. At the end of the day, it all comes back to the racism and the misogyny. It's the same way that people, poor white folks in Kentucky, hate Obamacare. They hate Obamacare, right? Don't talk to them about Obamacare, but talk to them about, what's it called, the Kentucky Connect or Commonwealth, whatever they call it, and they love it. They're like, don't touch my health care. I don't like Obama, he's a socialist, but don't touch my Kentucky whatever, because as long as it's not attached to Obama, as long as it's not attached to Kamala, as long as it's not attached to some black woman, and they can instead associate with the white supremacists, then they're all good. And that's the hard truth that this country has never been ready to deal with. The last thing I'm gonna say on the identity politics thing, and you touched on it, and this is, again, the problem with the media and the problem with these weak Democrats is they let Trump go out there and define the conversation. Nobody was running on identity politics. Kamala didn't even talk about being the first black South Asian woman. She didn't talk. In fact, if not for Trump, questioning her blackness, and then crazy old Dana Bash and whoever it was asking her about it in an interview, there would have been no discussion of her identity. There would have been no discussion of somebody running as an LGBT or as a trans person, right? But they run on that, and then after the fact, Democrats want to accuse Kamala and others of running on, in Carville's example, of running on identity. Wasn't nobody running on identity politics except for Trump. But y'all take the bait and y'all let him define it, and then you try to say this is what she was running on. And again, this isn't to say that the campaign was perfect, right? We've got our own critiques of the campaign and the financing and how much investment was put on the ground and all that. Fine. But at the end of the day, that's not what defined this election. The same thing that defined this election is what defined the election of 2016, what almost defined the election of 2020. And so, at the end of the day, all of these critiques of the campaign and Kamala and economic anxiety, it's just more of the same foolishness that we heard after 2016. And then it causes you to then what? To shift to the right. And then that creates this self-fulfilling prophecy of now you run away from the policies that were actually successful because you're trying to be like these other folks. And in running away, you've now made it more likely that more of the base is going to look at you like you're full of crap, because you are.
Well, that's why I'm still laughing. I was going back and forth with some people today. They kept talking about, Bernie got sandbagged in 2016, and Torun Walker was tweeting, talking about, I went to HBCU campuses and he had tremendous audiences there, and I said he couldn't get black votes. Then Breonna Gray, she was like, the poll, she was polling better among black voters than Kamala. I said, baby, Gallego was supposed to win by 8 to 10 points in Arizona and barely won. I said, don't show me no polls, show me votes. And so, again, these people are stuck in this alternate universe where they think, Bernie was super progressive. This is real clear. If Bernie Sanders were the nominee, Bernie Sanders would have been $100 million in ads calling him a communist, calling him a socialist, and they would have had, and here's the deal, they called Joe Biden that. See, and that's the thing that these Democrats like Carville and Chris Murphy don't understand. It doesn't matter what your voting record is. They're going to call you a communist and a socialist. Tim Walz was a gun-loving, hunting, middle of the country Democrat, and they called him weak, impotent. They call him every name in the book. That's what they're going to do. And so the reality is, what you can't do is allow it to go under. The Harris campaign, I was told this. They literally said, the transgender ads, they're not moving the needle. And I was like, I've been in Ohio, Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, and I'm seeing 8 to 10 commercials in every game. And what do we now know? That ad that features Charlamagne the God and DJ Envy, those ads, they spent $135 million. They said it moved 2.7 points. What did Donald Trump win by? 2.2 points. Every vote mattered. And so the basic lesson, Cliff, when you allow the opposition to define you and you don't respond and define them, you will be the one giving concession speeches.
Yeah. Just on that ad, and again, mistakes may have been made. I would have dealt with that differently. Like, part of their response was by saying, well, yeah, I did that, but Trump did it too. And that just wasn't landing correctly, right? And again, at the end of the day, it may not have mattered what she said about that issue, because again, white America going to do what white America going to do. But I would have dealt with it differently, by trying to pivot and saying, at the end of the day, it's not trans people that are shooting up your schools. It's not trans people that are causing your prices to be high, your housing to be high. It's not trans people that were denying you health care before we had Obamacare. It's not, trans people doing all these things. And and just reverse it and bring it back to the issue that you really want to talk about. But let me say this thing, because you mentioned Gallegos and, these Senate, and there's a lot out there about why some of the Dem candidates did better than Kamala Harris did. And, the challenging thing is, and I've said this before, the math ain't math. It's not so much that Democratic voters were voting for those candidates and then not voting for Kamala. The real disparity is in the fact that Trump got a whole bunch of hundreds of thousands of votes from people who only voted for him and evidently didn't vote for anything else on down ballot, right? Which is a statistical anomaly, right? And I think when you look at that anomaly, when you look at the fact that this is a man who has cheated on everything in his entire life, cheats on his wife, cheated in school, cheated on taxes, cheated with his businesses, cheats on the golf, cheats on everything in his life. But we are supposed to assume that in an election that's going to define his legal jeopardy, that he just decided, I'm gonna just play it up straight, right? And then on top of that, you throw in the fact that what we know, again, this is objective reality, that machines were tampered with in Georgia and in other states by his campaign. It's a part of the Georgia prosecution. At the end of the day, I'm not saying what definitely happened, but I'm saying what definitely needs to happen is that there needs to be some counts and some audits. And this is not sounding like MAGA of 2020, where they were just making up stuff out of nowhere. These are objective facts of things that existed in this election, not to mention 67 bomb threats, and the media has said nothing about it. Mm-hmm. Like, you would think that if there are 67 bomb threats that the FBI has linked to Russia, you would think that there should be some discussion about that. But it's been crickets from our media because they just wanted to move on to blaming Black folks and talk about economic anxiety. So my point is this, that I believe, Cliff Albright talking, not necessarily my organization, that we've got to have an accounting, a complete accounting selection, because there are too many things that just statistically speaking, we've never seen. And with this candidate, when you take something that you've never seen before and you mix it up in there with Elon Musk and Putin and everything else that we know, there's some questions that got to be asked. And that's not conspiracy theory. That's just common sense.
All right. Cliff Albright, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?